I'd also like to begin with sincere thanks to the Interfaith Center and the Micah Institute for the invitation to be with you today and to share in this wonderful celebration of the possible. As you can see, I've been around a while, and I also have been in peace and human rights movements for a while, mainly in education. And as I was saying to Claudia and Chloe earlier, the Poor People's Campaign and many of the movements that are coming up now are the manifestation of some of the dreams we had when we took on the task of educating for peace and justice in the 1960s. We always believed it was possible. Some told us it was impossible. We agreed that it might not be probable, but that didn't make the difference. The possibility nurtured the hope that kept us going. And I think that is what Reverend Cruz has given us this morning, is hope in possibility. Another thing I want to celebrate is the liberation of Martin Luther King. For too many years, Martin Luther King has been an icon of peace. They create a desert and they call it peace. One of the most significant events of the 20th century was the speech at the Riverside Church. And at that moment, it was made quite clear that this was not only an ethical movement, but that this was a political movement. So I am responding to Reverend Cruz's call as a feminist peace educator. I am asking myself, as such, how do I make this into curriculum, if you will? And by curriculum, I mean merely organizing conceptually significant, empowering ideas and enabling learners to engage with them so that they may become empowered for action. When I was starting to prepare, I felt I need a little preparation to respond. I looked back again at the 3 original principles. We now have 5, and I'm going to suggest a 6th. The original principles of the 3 evils that Martin Luther King identified: militarism, materialism, and racism. Okay, are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Those happen to coincide with the 3 categories of violence, which are part of the tools of my trade. And those categories are direct physical violence, structural violence of the economy of the political structure, and cultural violence. The direct violence is what I equate with the militarism, the structural with the materialism, and the cultural with racism. Because the cultural violence is that which is committed by the way we interact with others. It is both social and behavioral. Each of them works together They function together. I'm going to make a new word. Interfunctionality. They don't just connect, they reinforce and maintain each other. They are systematic and integral one to the other, and we need to understand that. So, in terms of how I would develop a curriculum for action from that point, I'm in the Trinitarian tradition. I have three central concepts, and they are solidarity, strategy, and sexism. And therein lies the sixth evil. Solidarity means our investment in one another. It means the intuition that we are one people. And it is the way in which we do politics and behave to manifest that oneness. I see that today very much in and it calls on us to resist the economic structures which perpetuate the conditions that Reverend Cruz outlined for us. And I see these things burgeoning, this kind of resistance burgeoning up, for instance, in the teachers' strikes. These teachers are not striking just for higher wages, although they should fight for justice for themselves, but for our children, for the future of our nation, which depends on our public schools. So that would be one example of solidarity and making it real for the learners. Strategy is the real politics, the one that takes on militarism. I would like to see us looking again not only at the war economy, not only at the militarization of the police, the militarization of our culture, but at the institution of war itself. War, and what you have referred to, Claudia, as the monopolization of the state on violence, I would argue makes all forms of violence possible. So long as the state can do that and say it is just and necessary, anyone can make the argument that violence is just and necessary. Well, the hope I see lies in the Never Again movement, in those young people who have been so courageous, so articulate, so clear-headed and purposeful, that they are shaming us who thought we taught them. I think it is very important that we understand the interfunctionality between the teachers' strike and Never Again, because some teachers did very well. That is obvious. Well, I think that you're going to give me the 2 minute, and that's okay. So, that leads me to cultural violence, the cultural violence of racism and sexism, which are also interfunctional. They feed upon each other, they rationalize each other, and they are insidiously implanted in our minds through the larger culture without our even knowing it. One of Claudia's main points was making the invisible visible. The point I want to add to that, which is most necessary when we confront sexism, is shedding light on the nature of vulnerability and how it is imposed. Our whole system is geared to have power reside in a few. That power rests on convincing a lot of people they are vulnerable and cannot resist because things would be even worse. What is happening now is that the vulnerable are refusing their vulnerability. And this, above all, is what I would like to be able to communicate to my students. That all of what we are talking about is a question of power. And power does not mean force and coercion. Power means the capacity to achieve your goals. And we are setting our goals forth. But I want to argue that unless among those goals, equality and equity for women is integral to all of them, and I can make an analysis, gender analysis of every point, but I won't subject you to that. But that is the sine qua non. And if you want evidence of the practicality of that, I want you to think about the Alabama miracle. And during the Q&A, I'll tell you what the Alabama miracle was if you ask me. Thank you very much.